Welcome back to the Expect to Be Moved podcast. Today we have another episode with Curtis Blackford, our amazing agent, and Angela Aldani, our other amazing agent. So it's a small crew today. We're sitting here through the remnants of a hurricane that's coming through. So it's pouring down rain. So we thought let's talk about maybe some frequently asked questions, or maybe even some storms that have happened through our transaction that we've had to field some curveballs or figure out how to pivot at the last minute to make the deal go through. So I thought we'd start today with just, kind of touching on some things that we hear frequently a lot of times from sellers or buyers that are maybe very traditional thinking. Maybe someone hasn't sold or bought a house in a long time. So I feel like everybody kind of has just their own bar to compare to on a real estate transaction. So whatever they went through last time in selling or buying a house, even if it's 15 years later, they kind of are stuck in that time warp of how things worked during that stage of real estate. And I'm here to tell you things have really progressed over the years. The way of buying and selling is completely different than what it used to be. So if you haven't sold or bought a house in the last few years, it's constantly changing, constantly progressing. And we're here to kind of explain some of those reasons why and what are some common misconceptions or frequently asked questions that we hear that we thought we'd share with you today so that we can bring you up to speed on today's real estate. So one of the things that we were just talking about, Angela, you were saying you were having a conversation this weekend with someone that's not a real estate agent, right?
No,
It's
not a
just
real estate
friend or somebody.
Yeah, we were just having a casual conversation.
And you mentioned a question that came up that actually comes up all the time. So I thought it would be a good jumping off topic to talk about. So you want to tell us?
Yes. Well, we were talking about staging the home and getting it ready for sale. And so the question was, is it better for me to have the house vacant? And then, of course, that depends on whether or not you can be out of the house. So,
right. So this is a situation where somebody is currently living in their house. It's not already something that they moved out of.
Yeah.
So they've got their life and their belongings and everything in the house.
Yes.
And they're asking you, is it better for them to completely move all of their stuff out?
Yes.
Which clearly has to be an option because not everybody has that option, right?
Right.
So move all their stuff out and stage professionally.
Yes, stage professional. That was the question. And of course, my answer was, it depends. And I feel like it's levels. So obviously, if you can move or if you have another home that you have to go to, then I think a full professional stage really does sell the home. But not everybody has that option to be able to say, I'm going to move to my next house. So I also advised my friend casually, I was like, maybe it's a good idea to have a stager come in to talk about your personal furniture, and maybe it is a situation where you're going to rent a storage maybe and put some of your stuff in storage, so it kind of takes away that clutter, and then the stager can kind of help you work with your own personal furniture and maybe add a little small knickknacks here and there to kind of like spruce it up.
So I classify that type of staging as stylizing. Staging, it does fall into the category of staging, but using some of your own things or rearranging some of your own things, bringing in a professional. Honestly, we've been doing this a long enough time that sometimes we can come in and tell you what we think exactly what to do. But if we need to bring in a professional, we absolutely do that.
Yeah.
If we feel like we need a little bit of a different eye. And that's an alternative to a stylizing with your own things, or perhaps using some of your things and bringing in some stager stuff to fill in some of the blanks.
Yes. And another question was, should I have pictures of my family up?
That's a great question.
Yeah, they were trying to say, should I remove all of my personal effects, like to my family, like photos or awards or something of that sort?
So everybody has a different answer to that. My answer to that is the definite old school traditional mindset of wiping the house clear of anything that's personalized. So taking all the photos out because you don't want the family coming in to picture your family, you want them to picture their family. But my argument with that is, I get the theory behind it, but why do we pay stagers thousands of dollars to come in and do staging, and they bring in picture frames with fake families in it, right?
Yeah.
So is it really deterring someone from picturing themselves in there? It depends. Do you have a whole collage like all over the walls that's distracting? Then I would say, yes, those need to come down.
Yeah.
But a few nicely placed photographs, whether it's your family or, somebody out of a magazine, if you prefer, I think that makes the house feel more homey, and it isn't gonna detract from it. Curtis, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You wouldn't stage it and put photos or pictures of make it look like a family was there. You would do it more a traditional route, but I don't tell people to take their personal photos down. I don't.
I think the bigger thing is clutter, right?
Totally.
Is it tastefully done, or is it detracting from someone taking in the whole picture of the house when they're walking through because they're so distracted with all of the different photos and things like that?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. And then just kind of circle back on the original part of staging. So I'll tell you personally, every time I've sold, well, I won't say every time, 2 out of 3 times when I've sold my personal house in the last 15 years, I either stylized with extra things. The last time I sold my house, I took out the majority of my own furniture in several of the rooms. I kept a few rooms, like the kids' rooms, of course, I kept. Our master bedroom, we changed some things, or our primary bedroom, I should say. But I brought in a professional stager, and I feel like I had pretty decent looking stuff. But here's the thing that people don't realize. When we're building our houses and we're putting the ornamental touches on our houses with our furniture and our photos and things like that, that typically doesn't happen in one poof. Like most people don't move into a house and then buy the whole house at one time and furnish it. You usually bring a couch from your old house, or you've got your grandma's buffet or something like that you've been collecting your furniture over the years and your decor over the years. And so you tend to mix and match those things as you're building up your household. And so although that's what your style is, or you're buying, I'll tell you, like when I was furnishing houses for years, I bought based on having children. Like I'm not going to go buy the most expensive furniture when my kids are going to, crash and burn it. So I didn't have necessarily the showcase looking stuff for years when you're in those younger stage of life. So I felt like it was better for me to move my things out that I bought for comfort or for wear and tear, and then bring in something that was more of a showcase piece. So I'm a big proponent of staging.
Yeah.
If you do have the ability to completely move out and let a stager come in and just go to town on it, that is clearly the best looking after picture, right? Because they're going to bring in all of the stuff that kind of matches together, has the same trend, flows well from room to room. Also, spatially, they're bringing in pieces that fit the size of the room, whereas we might have huge oversized couches for comfort.
Yeah.
They're going to bring in littler pieces to make the house appear bigger instead of having the furniture be the focus. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we know that staging works and painting works. I had a situation last year where I had someone that was in an $800,000 home, bought $1 million home.
Yeah.
They moved out and he said, "What should we do?" And I said, "Paint and stage." And it was on the market for, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. And I had another conversation with him. I said, "Look, we really need to do this. You've got a gorgeous home. And people are looking at faults in your home. They're not looking at the beautiful furniture. They're not, they're trying to pick faults where the paint is." Staged it, sold it within a week. Now the couple that bought it got occupancy prior to close. Now they've got a vacant house.
Right.
They had grandma and the 2 daughters that are in high school paint the house, thought it was good, and wanted to know what they needed to do to sell their house. I said, "We need professional paint in here." And I said, we need to stage it. I said, you've got a beautiful home, probably one of the nicer ones in the neighborhood. And they drug their feet. Finally, it was on the market again for 3-4 weeks. And they said, what do we need to do?
Because the feedback was
Right. The
paint's bad.
The paint's bad.
The paint job's
Yeah.
bad.
From the time that they got to the front door, they've got a Ring doorbell, and we heard, oh my gosh, the door's not painted very well. What's the rest of the house look like?
Right.
Of course, then you're looking for things.
Yeah.
Paint, staged, sold within a week. And actually, the people that bought the house bought some of the furniture from the staging
stager.
company because it looks so good.
Yeah.
So it makes a huge difference. They got asking price on both cases for the house, and sold within a week, and one sold, I think it was 10 days. So really quick turnaround.
And to your point, I do want to say it's a good idea to hire a professional for the painting, like especially
Yes.
because I did have someone ask me, well, I can just get my brother to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So
Depends on if their brother's a really good trimmer or not, because most people really stink at trimming.
yeah.
And then it looks very unprofessional. And then it's another job for the buyer. So the frequently asked question is, should I stage? Do I need to add more things? Our resounding answer to that is, if your house is not in a condition that is highlighting, especially your main rooms, to the best of its ability, then yes, it's better for you to stage or stylize or make some changes prior to professional photography because it's going to highlight your house the best.
Yes. Yes.
So what was one of our other questions that we were, get our little notes here.
Yeah, sorry. We were talking about price with it. Yeah,
So here's another
right.
frequently asked question, and we'll you and I'll talk about this. Is it better to price my house at $599,900 versus $600,000? So I always refer to that as a Walmart pricing, which there was a time and place that was a good strategy, because psychologically the buyer is hearing and seeing the 500s instead of hearing or seeing 600, even though it's $100 difference. So psychologically speaking, there is some benefit to that. However, the benefit was particularly helpful back in the day when the buyer didn't have access to finding homes themselves. So they relied on the realtor to, a long time ago, go through their MLS book. Post MLS book was search the MLS in their database. And then the agent was kind of picking out the houses and providing those to the buyer, saying, here's all the things that are in your price point. So when they're looking at an MLS sheet or they're looking at a book and they see 500 versus 600, then psychologically it makes a little bit of a difference. So that was the strategy. But once the internet came into play and properties were placed online, you can go, they're statistically proven that people searched in different brackets. And that kind of turned that theory on its head. The benefit of pricing, what they call pricing on the bridge, is one term that they use, which is pricing it at the even mark, suddenly was outweighing the psychological mark of it's 500 something instead of 600, because we were getting more eyeballs on the property when we priced it on the bridge. So 600 is picking up the people that are searching from the price bracket just below that and the price bracket just above that. So if you think about when you go online and you put in your criteria, you don't typically, unless you've been searching for a long time and you start figuring out how am I going to play with this, you don't typically go in and put, I'm searching for homes from 574 to 579 or 599.
Yeah.
You put in 575 to 600.
Yeah.
By having that $599.9 price, you're losing.
You're missing that entire base from 6 to 650.
6 to 650 or 6 to 625 or 6 to 605 if someone was pushing their price point. So you're missing the other bracket. You're still showing up in the one that's from 575 to 600, but you're not hitting the next bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely antiquated thinking and definitely not something that we advise until we've tried those price points. And then we're to a point where you're doing price reductions. And sometimes you're not willing to go from one bracket price to another, which is, understandable. But especially in the beginning when we're getting houses out into the mainstream and public eye, it's better to price on the bridge of those even numbers so that we can hit as many price brackets as possible. Any thoughts on that one?
I totally agree with what
You
you're
agree with
saying.
me?
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are our other things we
The
came up
other
with
ones
today?
that we came up with today. Well, we were talking about multiple offers,
Mhm.
and if it's better for the agent to kind of set a date and wait for all offers to come in,
Mhm.
or just take the offers when you get them, or what offer you feel that you want to take. We
you
had
had
some
some
mixed,
answers on
I
this.
think in the room, a little bit of a mixed
Yes.
perception.
So now in today's market, I mean, we would say that a year and a half ago when everything was hitting so hard, but it would also be we're accepting offers at this point. We want all offers in by a certain point, but we're also going to review offers as they come in. So
Right.
I think you have to see both approaches. If a family's just getting pounded and pounded and pounded with showings, and they've got 4 kids and they've got 2 dogs, and they're being pulled out of their house, and they've got a really nice offer that comes in that fits their needs, and they just want to stop the madness, then sometimes they'll take that offer. But ideally, you would want to take it through to the time frame that you talked about, to get all the offers that come in, and see what how they play out.
I agree. It's market dependent, and it's even hyper local market dependent.
Yeah.
Because it could be one part of town is selling differently than the other part of town. And Curtis, to your point earlier when we were discussing this, for the last several years, the strategy shifted to. Let me back up even more. When the market started to change from coming out of the 2008 funk after the crash, we're starting to see 2012, 13, 14, more around 14 to probably 18. It was exciting for an agent to be able to sell a house quickly because we came out of that being such a buyer's market that when you had the listing, it was sitting for days and weeks and months, and sometimes a year. So when we finally started to see the activity creep up, agents were so excited about it that they couldn't wait to beat their chest and say, sold, sold in a day, sold in a week, sold in 3 weeks, get so excited about it. And the problem was that they would list the house, let's say on a Friday, trying to catch the weekend traffic. And we started to see a trend that when it started to starting to shift slowly back into a seller's market, the first buyer that walked through the house could lock it down that night. And we let them because we're so happy to have a buyer, right? And that worked for a little while. It was great. But then as the market became a little warmer and then a little hotter, we started realizing, wait a minute, the house has been on the market for 4 hours. And we've got this offer and the buyer's given us, a time frame of 9 o'clock tonight, and came on the market 3 o'clock today. How do we know how many people we're going to possibly view it this whole weekend? And so we were cutting out
Right.
those days because we were so excited to get an offer that everybody just took the first offer. And so it took, probably a year or two for some people to get used to, wait a minute, maybe this isn't so smart to
Right.
do that. So, but, it transitioned over the few years of trying to change that strategy. So then when the market got really hot after the pandemic was in play, most people started going towards we're coming soon. We're going to pre-market it for a little while. Then we're going to allow showings to start happening on this day. And then we're going to not get back to anybody on response times until this day. So that was opening up the window for more buyers to come through the house and sellers to not be upsetting someone by not getting back to an offer because we were setting the mood up front. Like, this is the expectation. House is open to the public today. We're going to do our open house on this weekend. We're going to review all the offers that come in, and then we're going to get back to everybody on Tuesday. That was unheard of a few years ago. Buyers would have been so mad and think that you were so cocky and arrogant that they would have been like, forget my offer, right? Now it became the way of doing things.
It's kind of common. I see it.
It's very common.
Yeah.
But the tides are changing.
Yeah, this is true.
So that's why I say it's market dependent, hyper local dependent. It's still a good idea to allow for two reasons. It's good for the seller and it's good for the buyer to not rush into a one-day closing or one day under contract if possible. Because for the buy, what I saw happening when all this first started to transition, and then when we went through the pandemic and buyers were losing out on houses, what they were doing is they were rushing into the decision. They had 10 minutes to walk through the house. And then there was more people coming through the house. And then they had to rush that offer in. So we started seeing a lot of buyer's remorse that would happen the next week.
Yeah.
So now you've got all these offers, and then you pick the one that you think is solid based on their terms. And then the following week, they were like, never mind. You know, we just felt like we were rushed and we didn't have time. So that's not good for the seller either. So what we're doing now is opening that window up for at least a few days has been a good strategy for this current market. However, like you said, you have to really be monitoring that listing. You even have to be careful with how you word it, because once we went from a red hot market to a hot, maybe warm market for sellers in some areas, that started to come across to some people as arrogant or cocky. Sure. And some buyers they shrink away from making offers on houses like that they feel like they've got to go fight really hard for. So I would say, know your area, know your competition, and then try to read what we think the consumer is going to do with that. But then also be careful with your wording so that it comes across as just a suggestion of, hey, right now this is kind of how we're doing it, and we appreciate any offers that come in. However, we're not going to respond to any offers that may come in instead of all offers that come in. That sounds like it's so brutal to people.
And a lot of that is us as buyers agents, though. When we talk about, our buyers not setting the expectations up front, if you're not having a consultation with them and letting them know what the market's like, they haven't bought in 7 years, first-time home buyers, we've really got to set the expectations with them. But you owe it to them to sit down with them, even if they're like, no, I just want to go look at this house, and really have a good conversation with them about today's market. It helps so much. Same thing with sellers. We do it with sellers all the time, but with buyers, let's jump in the car, let's go see XYZ.
Escalation clause.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I was just saying about the escalation. Then just kind of came to my head because, again, I have another friend somewhere, actually in another state, who recently bought a home. I do. I have lots of friends. Hi, friends. But they're in another state. They bought their first home. And I think the market was pretty hot in that state because they had went in for another one and they lost it. They lost the bid. They lost the offer. But so I'm kind of hearing it through them, but also through their parents, because I know their parents, and their parents are like, yeah, they've been trying to make it and they got pushed out. And so I mentioned to the mom, I was like, what about the escalation clause? And she was like, what is that? I don't know. What happened? What is that? I was like, well, it's the clause that allows them to up their offer if another offer comes in at a certain price. Up the offer up a little bit. So the mom was like, I have never heard of that. I don't know what that is. Is that even possible? What does that mean? And I was like, well, you should have your daughter ask the agent, because it was another state, ask their agent if they understand.
Not be allowed in that state.
Right. I
It's
was
hard
like,
to know.
yeah, I was like, so they should know if they have an escalation clause, if it's allowed, or if there is one.
Right.
Anyways, long story short, she goes back. I guess she had the conversation. She comes back to me and she said they did have an escalation clause. She did put it in, and they just made the close on their deal.
Oh, well, good. Good. Yeah. Escalation clauses are up for debate, even in our state. It's allowed, like it's not illegal in our state. Some states, they don't allow it. But there's certain brokerages that aren't allowing it, or there's certain agent groups or teams that just take a hard stance of, we're not going to entertain any escalation clauses. So, talk to your agent or your broker on that one to see where they stand. And obviously they have their reasons behind whether they agree to them or not. I think it can be a great tool. There's definitely pros and cons to that, but that's something that we can dive into deeper later. But that is a frequently asked question. And another one that I've had for the entire career, and the answer to this has changed over the years, is I don't really want to have to do anything to my house. I don't want to put money into new carpeting or pick a new countertop, because how do I know what the buyer's going to like? I don't want to pick something and spend money and then the buyer doesn't like it anyway. So I would rather just offer them a credit or reduce the price, something like that, rather than make those changes. We get that all the time.
All the time.
And what is their answer to that?
And we're telling them up front that there's issues with the house. And I just think it sends a bad message, personally.
I think
We know enough. We work with staging companies enough. We've done enough homes. We know what the current trends are as far as colors and what sells today. We can show them on the MLS what's selling today to make the appropriate changes to their home to get them top dollar.
top dollar. I think every seller wants top dollar, even if they're saying something like, I don't want to replace my carpet, but they still want the top dollar for their home. And I think a carpet could be 5,000. I'm not sure. I'm just doing some random pricing, but I'm just saying like 5,000, but you could have got maybe 10,000 more on your offer if it could be double. Just these are random numbers. I haven't done any exact math or anything like that. But I think it is important to think about that, especially with everything being online. Again, pictures on Zillow, everyone's looking at them. They need to shine from the start.
It
You know,
almost
the
looks
house.
like you're selling the house as is, and the buyers are expecting some sort of a discount on top of that. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea. Sometimes we have to do that because they put their feet in the sand, but
Yeah.
Well, my thoughts on that is more technical, because it's easy to say, let's just offer them a credit. Charlie agrees, right, Charlie? Your first podcast, buddy. It's easy to say, let's offer them a credit, but it's not easy to funnel that credit necessarily to a buyer.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, let's say you've got $12,000 worth of flooring that needs to be replaced. And so you want to say, okay, we'll offer them $12,000 credit. But the buyer is getting a loan, and the loan only allows for a certain amount of seller contributions that can be paid. So that differs depending on your buyer's loan, whether it be 3%, 4%, or 6%. So if the buyer is needing any type of closing cost assistance or wanting to roll their closing cost into their mortgage so they're not having to come out of pocket with money, that all comes out of that percentage. So they're capped out at that amount. So then you try to throw a $12,000 credit into the mix. There's not going to be room for that. So reducing the price is the next thing that the seller, well, let's just reduce the price. Well, reducing the price, all that it's doing is reducing the loan amount for the buyer. It is not putting that money into the buyer's pocket. So the buyer is still looking at, I got to come out of pocket $12,000. Let me back that up. I got to come out of pocket $20,000 because the buyer's not thinking about the lower level fixes that you were going to probably do to get the house to sell with the flooring replacements. They're thinking wood floors. They're thinking the tile in the kitchen, like the things that they are going to need to make right away to make those changes, then goes up quite a bit. So my answer to that is always paint and carpet, something updated with the floors and countertops is a huge, huge, huge benefit, and will actually put more money in your pocket netting it to go ahead and do it. Will help you pick something that is trending now so that the buyer isn't going to have an issue with it. And it's way better to get the work done than to leave that wide open for the buyer to guesstimate how much it's going to cost him. So either A, they're going to guesstimate more, so they're going to make their offer less to you, or B, they're going to take themselves out of the running, period, because they don't have that kind of money sitting around after their down payment, after their closing costs are paid. They can't come out of pocket for that. So that's my technical answer to that.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah. So, and that's a super frequently asked question. And I've been talking about this for ages of spend the money and we will help you. We've got contractors that come in at great, budget pricing and really to deliver a great product. So
Yeah.
Anything else that we can wrap up on frequently asked? We have so many of them
That's
that we
great,
almost
I
block
know.
them out. But those are our top topics today. So if we don't have anything else on our list, then I would say be sure to, have us over early. That's the thing. Have us over
Yeah.
early. Let us determine by looking at your property what needs to be done or what you can get away with. Because a lot of times what's on your list are not going to be what's on our list. And our list is based on experience that we get on houses that we've put on the market that either A, took our advice, and then we can tell you what sold quick or didn't, or didn't take our advice, and therefore we end up seeing it sit on the market, or we see the feedback come back from other agents or their buyers that are echoing the same thing that we told the sellers up front. We don't want you to make that mistake because time on the market equates to value.
Mm-hmm.
A buyer's opinion of your house is, did anybody else want this house?
Yeah.
And so as it sits on the market, they're answering that question themselves. That must
Yes.
not be everybody's choice. So
I had a buyer
Should
say
I
this
pick
to me.
this house?
I took her to a showing and she said, and I had other properties ready besides the showing. So I was saying, oh, what about this? What about that? And she goes, oh, I saw that, but it was on the market for more than 14 days. So I just skipped over it.
yeah, and that's very, very typical of a buyer. A buyer usually walks in and the first question out of their mouth isn't, what's the square footage? It's, how many days on the market has this been on?
Yeah.
Yep.
If they don't already know, because
Mhm.
they're
It creates a
hawking.
stigma for sure.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to take away anything up front that could possibly put us in a situation where the clock is adding up so that we don't have to chase the market, come back and do the changes later, which is time on the market, or have to do price reduction after price reduction to get it to the point where a buyer then feels like it's a deal, even though they have to come in and make those changes. So moral of the story, have us over early. Don't start doing a bunch of things to your house before we've been able to come over and consult with you. And then trust us to give you the right advice to get your home ready for the market. And also as a buyer, trust our advice on some of the houses that you've come into that sellers decided not to do some of the things that you were wanting to do. There are ways that you can still buy that house and make the changes and be within your budget. So we have creative ideas and workarounds for that too. So the idea is pick a realtor that you trust and then let's go buy and sell a house.
Would you go to a doctor and have surgery if you didn't go interview him and ask him what the whole detail of it is? So that's the point. Don't just start working on your house
Yes.
if you haven't consulted an expert.
Get the prescription.
Yeah,
first.
or get the prescription. Don't just go to a doctor and say, "Hey, give me this." The doctor's like, "Wait a second, I need to.
Haven't even looked at
I
you
haven't
yet.
looked at you. I need to
Yes.
check you out first."
Yeah. I guarantee you, usually we'll save you some work on some of the things that are on your list, and then we're going to guide you in the right direction to get you top dollar. Thanks for tuning in today.